Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, the weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. You're gonna have to excuse me a little bit. I've been under the weather pretty much all week since I don't know, I guess late Wednesday, early Thursday. I went to the doctor, I had a few shots, and just body reacting to it, I suppose. First time I've been sick since I got COVID back in what was that, end of 2023? I think it was the last time I really got sick before this. So I've been keeping my streams going, working on my Final Fantasy Platinums, but video work other than that pretty much halted. Fortunately, this week, weekly Q&A, Final Fantasy 11 part, that's fine. We have the live letter, and we should have a State of the Realm minimum. So you're looking at 4 videos. I'd like to get probably another 14 mobile video out, plus there's one other thing. What was the other thing? Oh, I want Tales of Grace's app. That video didn't come out because I really couldn't work on it while I was sick. I could have typed it. I guess I could have typed up the script, but I didn't do that either. Either way, it's a quick heads up how my week's been. I'm probably going to rush through this pretty quick because I still I have post-nasal drip. And so talking and my throat's a little sore from post-nasal drip. So I'd rather not stretch this on too long. No ad at the start of this week. Thanks to everyone over on Patreon for supporting. Remember, everything I do is available for free, but anyone on Patreon throwing out that extra little bit, always appreciate it. Steel Series, of course, I'm going to be working with them a little more closely this year. I actually wanted to work on something for them this week that, I could just make and put out there on YouTube or on socials or whatnot for actually the headset that I'm wearing right now, which is the very expensive one. But that link always in the description of every video, discount code 12% year-round. So if you're ever looking for peripherals, you can ask about them on the weekly Q&A, or you can just use the link if you know what you want, and save some money with my discount code while you're at it. So with that, let's get on to the Q&A so I can just chill for the rest of the day, get the Final Fantasy 11 parts that are already recorded, rendered, and, well, yeah, the chill part that I said first. Yeah, I'm still tired. Let's get going. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello, Mr. Happy. Hi. 2 questions. 1, with 7.2, we'll get a new dungeon, and as such, they will split the level 100 dungeons into 2 categories, expert and level 100 dungeons. But it isn't quite necessary to split them. Wouldn't it be much easier just to have them all be available in the same roulette? So there's a couple of reasons why they're split. I'll say neither of which I completely agree with. One is that the item level requirement is so wide apart that they don't want them in the same roulette. This, to me, obviously, just we have leveling roulette. We have places where there are gaps. But they aren't programmed the same way as these ones, I suppose. So these ones, you actually need to have all the dungeons completed in order to do them. Whereas with leveling, you just need to have, I think it's 3, maybe even just 2. Yeah, I think it's just 2 total options in order to access them. So it's something that's got to be programmed differently about them fundamentally for them to have that reason to even do it in the first place. But that's one of the reasons. The other one is simply that if you haven't progressed the story, because you require all of them for a roulette, you're effectively locked out of doing some dungeons in roulettes. Now, in this way, they only lock out 1 potentially, with the most recent one, Yawada, and, the new one you haven't done for expert, whereas the old ones you may have already done, you don't have to worry about those locking away. You still have a roulette accessible to you, even if you haven't caught up with the MSQ and the new dungeons. I would prefer roulettes that have at minimum 3 dungeons. I think the 2 roulette thing. I don't want necessarily more dungeons, but they should have 3 at the minimum. It just doesn't make sense to me to have only 2. That's a coin flip, not a roulette. I suppose if you load 3 chambers up with one and 3 chambers up with the other, it's it's statistically a coin flip. But yeah, either way, I've never been a fan of the 2 dungeon roulette itself. And then the second question: why are the totems from extremes, books from savages, and coins from alliance raids all such items that clog up your inventory? Why aren't those just placed in the currency tab? So there is no actual explanation for it, so I will throw you a theory. They decided that it probably wasn't, they probably weren't acquired at a prominent enough rate to completely rework those systems, whereas something like the Beast Tribes, which are now they're allied society quests, they were always something that were acquired en masse. Most of the player base interacted with them, so getting them out of inventories probably held a higher priority. This is something they can absolutely do. They've proven it by taking previous currencies and throwing them into the currency tab. But they may have just decided that for currencies that are not as frequently used by the player base, let's be honest, EXs are probably about 1/4, to up to 1/3 of the player base ever obtains those, and then especially holds on to them. Books from Savage also has an upper limit of 20 to 25% of the player base, and later as the Savage fights, go. And the coins from Alliance raids are only once per week, and a lot of players do tend to spend them as they get them, so that inventory space is usually traded down anyway. So I'm willing to bet data suggests that they probably don't need to urgently make changes to them, because it doesn't impact enough players compared to something like the Allied Society things that do go to the currency tab when they used to not go to the currency tab. But that's a theory. They've never explicitly stated that. I'd just be willing to bet it's in line with their decision-making as to why they haven't done it. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey, Haps. Hi. How about some achievement rewards for completing side quests? There are some. I just don't know off the top of my head. A minion for doing 100 or something, or mounts achievement points for milestones. Well, there are a finite number of side quests in the game. I don't think a milestone makes any sense for something that has a finite number. Not that kind of one. Not ones because like 5, 10,000. I don't know how many side quests are in the game. I couldn't tell you the exact number, but like, if you're going to make an achievement like that, it's going to be for a number of side quests that makes sense. Realistically, you'd more likely do meta achievements per zone to have all the side quests cleaned out. And even then, the majority of them would likely not come with rewards. It's just not something... Individual side quests often have rewards themselves or have alternative purposes, such as an additional method of earning experience points or story, to the point where they probably don't care about offering minions, especially if they have to retroactively do it. Your kind of milestone thing makes it so that they don't retroactively have to do meta achievements for every zone, but it doesn't... You'd still have to make it something that was currently achievable, and I don't think they want people to be thinking about doing them for that reason. They want people to think about the other reasons and the rewards that are given from them naturally, as opposed to giving an achievement incentive for doing them. But I'm speaking for them. I personally wouldn't care. This wouldn't get me to do more side quests. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey there. Hi. I hope life treats you well. Well, I'm sick, but hey, the good news is, though, A, I'm coming out of the sickness. I'm basically done with it. I just have a little bit left. Like I said, that post-nasal drip's still kind of affecting my my throat. And I got blood tests this week, and they all came back positive. My HDLs, my LDLs, my kidneys, everything. I'm waiting on one more test that they said would take a bit longer. But hey, it's always worth celebrating being healthy, especially because, like, I can't imagine what those labs would have probably looked like a few years ago. It's true story. When I was really heavy, I didn't actually eat that unhealthy. I was like 225, and then I, over the course of like half a year, went down to like 170. But I actually didn't like gorge myself in like unhealthy foods. I still didn't really eat fast food. I didn't drink soda. My coffee, I drank black. And it was just that I was willing to, like, oh, if I want cake, I'm going to go buy cake. Right. It was just that lack of discipline that kind of kept me that's why I took the first like 15, 20 pounds of water weight off pretty quick and then grinded out the rest of the not water weight over the next however long. So I'll say that's life treating me well, or at least me treating life well and it treating me back, I guess. I'll start with the question and explain my thoughts down below. Okay. Do you think that receiving the new field operation instance on 7.35 is a possibility? Okay, before I even read it, you're going to propose that Bozia gave us the not instance in 0.2x. So I'm going to tell you no right away, because they've already explicitly stated that there are certain mechanics prevalent in Crescent Island, such as support jobs, that there would have to be an instance with which to execute on that. Now, you're going to explain maybe that's not what you mean, but they've already given us enough information. Yeah, exactly. No. So I can already tell from the first sentence that I predicted what you were going to say. No, they've already told us enough details about Crescent Island, about what the purpose of it is, and the reward structure, or the volume of rewards relevant with field content. No, we are getting the zone. Oh, and just to double back to that last question, the series for the operations is called Shade's Triangle, which if you paid attention to the Dawn Trail story, you remember when that was mentioned. Crescent Island is the first field instance. So on top of that, they've been giving us the field instance name for quite some time. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hi, hello, and well met. Hello. Hope you're having a happy Saturday. Oh, you just asked us on Saturday. I was confused for a second, because normally people say like, oh, I hope you're having a good Monday. So Saturday, I was like, oh, you know what, though? I have been answering these on Saturdays. Today is actually Sunday. I was way sicker on Saturday this last weekend. So the last 24-hour turnaround has been pretty good. Playing Barden was curious if they ever brought back Flaming Arrow. Should it be a standalone OGCD, or should it have some interaction with songs or dots? What it should do is different than what it would likely do. You're likely right in that it would probably have a 15-second duration, once a minute, off global, throw it down, and that's it. That's very likely what it would be. I never turn away interaction as long as it's leveraged well against the design of the rest of the game. Bosses are very often held still long enough, or even if they are moved, nowadays they're not usually moved massive distances across 15 seconds while you're damaging them, unless they're in the middle of a mechanic where they move themselves, which does happen not infrequently. And Endwalker, this wouldn't have been a problem at all, because the boss hitboxes were so big, they would have always been in Flaming Arrow, even if they were moving. But should it? I mean, yeah, again, I don't think it necessarily should. I think there are other interactions that Bard has either had in the past or that would be more representative of the job that are more important to stress than Flaming Arrow interacting with those things. Dot interaction is something that has gradually slipped away in terms of the fact that your dots just being active now provide the interaction, whereas they used to have to be active and critting before, which gave you kind of an itemization goal. Now, crit is obviously everyone's itemization goal, so it's not really that relevant much anymore. But a lot of people want that back. They want something that makes their dots not just feel like a formality. And I think holding the precedence on that as opposed to Flaming Arrow, or then adding Flaming Arrow as another element, like people would rather have, like, okay, like, the only thing people would accept with this is if Flaming Arrow, for some reason, spread your dots. Doesn't make sense, really. And then after that, because people want a Bane for their Bard dots before they want something that, as my second suggestion was going to be, detonates them. And then detonating goes against their song interaction, unless you were to guarantee a certain amount of song interaction, but then you have to weigh that versus the GCDs of reapplying them. There's like a whole bunch of other tools that would have to change for Flaming Arrow to have any interaction. So I think it would be better to put the efforts into focusing on Bard's actual core identity as a Bard and the interactions there, as opposed to adding a new tool and trying to make it have interaction just to get back something that existed so many years ago. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey, boss. Hello. I was wondering if you know what's up with Physick. I don't think anyone knows what's up with Physick. It's the same as Cure 1. So here's the thing. On Summoner, obviously, it's useless. But even on Scholar, it's just like... Cure 1 Physick, all of the lowest tier spells for healing are effectively bait. You should never be using them outside of the level range where it's the only option that you could be healing somebody if you need a GCD heal. But as for Summoner, it's a dead button. As such, you just don't assign it, realistically. So, like, you don't even have to think, oh, where should I assign? You just don't. It's really just there because of Scholar. Like, they wanted to give the base heal not at level 30 so they could give a Loquium at level 30. And so they gave it to Summoner. And it's fine when you're Arcanist and you're kind of first going through. It's just by the time you become Summoner, yeah, it no longer serves its purpose. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Gonna throw a loop in the greeting. I thought you were going greetingless for a second there overall. Man, A, I don't know what that means, so I hope it's not bad. B, I'm going to assume it says Mondays with Mr. Happy in... Is that Tagalog? Is that Tagalog? I don't know if that's Tagalog. I just remember a lot of similar, like, kind of letter correlation. I dated a Filipino woman for several years. And so I remember hearing the language a lot. I remember reading the language. But I don't think I would have ever read Mondays with Mr. Happy. If that's even what it says. I don't know what it says. Anyways, finished watching the episode with Grinding Gears. It was refreshing to have someone no overly negative in the state of the game. By that, Doomer. I know we don't have WoW levels of Doomer, but it feels quite draining to see how negative or jaded some people have become in such a short period of time. Well, okay. So here's the thing. I'll speak candidly. First of all, I think a lot of people are a little bit adverse to negative feedback on things they like, especially if they're kind of okay with things at the moment. I know I get a lot of pushback when I criticize some pretty popular RPGs like Xenoblade 2. I like to throw it under the bus a lot. Final Fantasy 9, I just got finished doing the Platinum, and obviously I was throwing jokes about that game the entire time. They're not jokes much from me. But when you enjoy something, it's a lot of people are adverse to hearing negative opinions on it, but that doesn't mean the negative opinions shouldn't exist. And that's an important distinction that I think a lot of people need to make. Now, I'm not saying that's what you're doing, but what happens is is there's a part where people go from giving negative feedback for the sake of improving something to providing it in the context of, how do I want to put this? It is the on-topic thing to do. I don't want to say people are following other people's opinions. I think they are often speaking for themselves, but they are willing to throw, excuse me, cat hair in my tongue, that little extra oomph that's a little beyond criticism and more to the point of hyperbole of their own thoughts, either as a form of entertainment or as a means of drawing more clicks from like-minded people who are generally, when it comes to negative related stuff, people are much faster to hop on. If I made something, or if I made things speaking negatively on Dawntrail and certain aspects of it, and I made them nonstop, I'd probably get a decent number of clicks. And I have criticisms of 14 of Dawntrail. People like to think I don't have criticisms. No, I'm just not a Neanderthal. I can word them, and I can word my criticisms in such a way where there are positives and there are negatives, and which ones outdraw them. Like it's a discussion and not a proclamation of this is how it is and this is what needs to happen. It's like, this is how I perceive it, and this is what I think would help the solution. You know what I mean? Like, and there's just a complete lack of that on the internet nowadays. So I think that a lot of people's aversion to this has come from a mix of just the volume of negativity versus the way the negativity is presented. Because it feels like it's the cool thing to hate Dawntrail. So I feel like a lot more people are hopping on that train than they otherwise would, even if they were dissatisfied. There's also a lot more people playing nowadays, because the worst expansion we ever had was Heavensward. The negativity for Heavensward, it honestly blows the Dawntrail negativity away. But there were less people playing, so it really doesn't matter as much. It was really, really, really bad. Like, yeah, you'd have the story people who are like, oh my god, this is the greatest story of all time. Fair. I think Heavensward is one of the best stories in 14. But the expansion, the on-expansion player experience was by far the worst the game has ever been. And with Dawntrail, that still remains to be the case. Heavensward was still the worst on-content experience. Did do some things a little smarter, though. But that didn't help. It was just a fundamental, like, flaw in, like, thinking and design that, again, even exceeds what could be seen as fundamental flaws in design in Dawntrail. So it's it was something else, realistically. But as to the question, where do you think all the sentiment came from? Or is it typical internet behavior? I answer that. It's kind of a mix of both. It's cool to hate on, so you get those extra levels of negativity that, again, they kind of vibe beyond they kind of vibe beyond criticism, and more so hating it for the sake of hating it, or it being the cool thing to do, or the expression of the opinion is the cooler thing to do, so you can't really focus as much on the positives. It effectively becomes clickbait almost, in a sense. But the sentiment does genuinely come from the fact that there are things people want to see improved. Things that Endwalker didn't do for a really long time. And then we have a new expansion, and a lot of those things still haven't happened because they've been focused more on the fundamentals of Final Fantasy XIV than on bringing quality or longevity in certain factors. Where they have brought quality in some ways, they have not necessarily improved the day-to-day or even week-to-week for players who only play once or twice a week experience for those players, which as a virtue then de-incentivizes maintaining a subscription outside of systems like housing, which are more so built in a way that traps players when they're not actually disabled for demolishing, which people love when they're disabled for demolishing, hilariously enough. So yeah, no, it's a mix of the two, and differentiating between the two is not always easy, but what matters the most is what you enjoy and what you feel. And then if you are someone with a negative opinion, you should feel free to post it, regardless of how it may be perceived, or even if you are kind of on that, it's kind of cool to hate. If it's a valid criticism that is still shared across other people, even if your expression method is hyperbolic and kind of more on trend than necessarily built for criticism, it's still something that is being said, and thus the more widespread it is, the more likely it is to be addressed. And that's number one thing. You just can't suppress negativity because it sucks to hear, because that's how things never get better. That's true not just in Final Fantasy, obviously, that's true in everything. So I wouldn't think on it too much. I would just focus on what you enjoy when things like that are kind of feel bogged down, or they're overly bogging down your day-to-day experience with something you enjoy. You just kind of got to turn off a little bit and separate yourself from it. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey, Haps. Hi. Want to do a follow-up on a discussion from the Grinding Gears State of the Realm? Sure. The discussion about Valagramanda having interesting and new mechanics at pretty close to home for me. Looking towards Savage 7.2, my static from 7.0 recently lost 3 people or are leaving due to the Savage feeling like it's become stale and fairly uninspired. I've only finished 2 tiers at this point. I'm still very excited for rating every tier, so it's definitely instant me. I continue to enjoy solving the Savage mechanics for the first time every tier. Weekly farm and 8-month loot lockout is still bad. Agreed. Question. How are you feeling about Savage rating at this point in the game? Does the content still excite you the same way it used to? If yes, why? If no, what do you think it would take to get back to that point? Do you think there's still design space the developers haven't? My experience is different. I enjoy figuring things out before everyone else has figured them out, or at least as close to before other people have figured them out. I like to at least have a shot at it before we start referencing other things. But I am very much about achieving victory as soon as possible. And as such, that part of it excites me. I really enjoy that kind of sprint of content at the beginning. And I've never in all of Final Fantasy XIV's history been like, oh, I need to raid every week. You know, like I want to for the loot, but I can honestly sometimes appreciate when a fight feels good to re-clear. But I'm not like, oh my God, yes, re-clears! Yeah! I shouldn't have done that. That actually really hurt. I might have to talk a little softer. That was dumb. I get a little too excited during these. I'm fine. I always say I'm the kind of person you never want to design games around, because I'll churn through all the content I enjoy so quick that I don't play as much as everyone else does, and I also enjoy content that's strictly on the upper echelon of difficulty and or problem solving. And as such, I actually find my opinion on these matters to be a little less valuable. I think the average player who is thinking of doing Savage for the first time, they're the ones that need to feel most inspired to try it out. They're the ones who need to feel most welcome to trying things out. And when it comes to Savage itself, I find that it's just down to personal preference and even less about that, about the individual's like thoughts. But the general reception to the most recent tier is that it was pretty good and that the last boss just had too little health. But nobody just wants to farm the Savage bosses for 9 months. It's one of those things where you can make something that's fun and engaging and good, and new players want to try it out, and it's got a pretty good participation rate. But if it's A, weekly locked for 8 to 9 months, and B, is their chief method of achieving that level of player to game engagement in that time frame, that it's likely to be demotivating for subscriptions. This is why I've been big on them saying, like, teasing us content for the expansion that's like a year out, stuff like Crescent Island and Cosmic Exploration, because they need those activities. Those activities actually create kind of like a palette reset in between weekly lockouts that kind of either A, they motivate you to get through stuff like weeklies faster if they're not where the majority of your fun is happening, and B, they get you to engage with the game more in a way that may cause you to expand the way that you like, oh man, I've been doing this for a little bit, and there's like this one part's a little challenging, and I actually kind of like it. Like, I wonder what it'd be like if I tried extreme. You need those bridges in interest and content gaps to really get people to be more intent on engaging. So for me, Savage technically is fine. I judge everything boss to boss. Is this boss good? Is this boss not good? Do I like the theme? Do I like their thematic? Do I like the actual OST theme? Do I like how it's challenging me as a player, how I think it'll challenge other people as a player? I just take that as it comes, because Savage is what it is, and quite frankly, I have no problem with that. And it's just the design space before it and after it that I think they constantly need to be striving to be better at. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hi from London. Hi to London. Hope you're well. that scream didn't help, but still. I'm heading to New York for my anniversary late February. Congratulations ahead of time. Can you recommend some gaming stores, especially that sell Final Fantasy merch? So I can't for two reasons. One, I haven't lived in New York for... Well, I haven't lived in New Jersey. I worked in New York. I haven't worked in New York since early 2013. I've been back to New York a single time in the past decade or so. And so even if I knew them, I couldn't even guarantee they were still open. B, I don't buy merchandise from stores. If I'm going to buy stuff like what's behind me, it'll be online. Even back in the day, like if I could buy it online, I would have bought it online. So I don't know. I actually don't have any good recommendations. I haven't lived there. Like I just haven't kept up with the knowledge, in quite some time. So I can't be of any help. I saw a question of someone asking if it helps to sit through the Magic Spoon ad. No, it helps to buy Magic Spoon. That space they're paying for is an advertisement space. But, oh, hi, Ivy. But it helps to buy Magic Spoon through the link more than anything else. So, hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hi there, Haps. Hi. Hope you're having a good day. I'm doing all right. Any forgotten features of the game that you think are worth being revisited and being spruced up a bit? For example, I was looking at the challenge log. I feel like there'd be no harm in adjusting the rewards a bit just to add more weekly incentive. For example, add tomes to the dungeon challenge log, scripts to crafting and gathering, bicolor gemstones to the fate log. Yeah, there's no, I personally see no harm in updating or adding something like that. There's a lot of systems that have just been left behind because they've been given better, newer systems. Squadrons being replaced with trusts for the most part. They are two different systems, but they fill a similar-ish role in those first 50 levels. And then in the higher levels, obviously, it's always been, trusts and duty support for that. And then they've only, in the recent years, gone back and done the earlier ones. And then there's obviously, you could go with like leave quests, which are only used for crafting and gathering now. You could go with the hunting log, but we have the actual hunt bills, which has kind of replaced that. So I feel like they've phased out a lot of things from before with newer systems that are easier to update for them because they're not tied to a pre-existing system, or they're tied to a system that better supports more regular play. Like the hunting log is a one-time thing, whereas the hunting bills are a daily thing for people using them to level up. And they probably see more interaction with the hunting logs than they did with the hunting bills than they did with the hunting logs. What you've specifically suggested, though, I see no harm in it, personally. Tomes are so easy to get. Scripts are so easy to get. Bicolor gemstones are. But if there were more methods, players might feel more tempted to engage with those systems if they otherwise didn't. I would go for scripts to get mount tokens as long as orange scripts are available. And if it was only purple scripts, they would probably have to make it orange scripts. Maybe some purple, some orange in order to incentivize me. Tomes too. Probably have to be a little bit of both, not just the easy to get tome, not just poetics or something like that, unless it was, specifically made for old content. There's nothing I particularly want them to go back and spruce up other than our very own glam system, but that's not even like old. That's, constantly being current. And I think most of us would like an updated glam system after, playing other games. A lot of us have experienced it in other games and how it's not the way 14 does it. And I think a lot of people would prefer it to continue to expand and evolve and not be the way 14 does it. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey, Mr. Happy. Hi. How you doing? Doing all right. Just one question. It's a short one. Since Alliance rate is from 11, do you think they would ever do a relic weapon that is like Dynamis was in 14? I mean, most of our relics are like that. They're just not as tediously slow as that. So if you're asking if they would be as tediously slow as that, no. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, Happy. Hi. Quick follow-up question to one from last week regarding being slow to pick up new mechs. Yeah, that was not the week for me to have to remember it when I'm still sick. My nose is actually getting kind of stuffy right now, too, probably from all the talking. It was like somebody was in a static and their group members were like learning, like having difficulty being taught mechanics or something like that. It's something in that vein. It's an issue I personally always fear people judge me for, specifically in PF. How can I show, in quotes, that I'm trying to learn a mechanic while I'm still a bit of a slow learner, as it has been a deterrent for me even joining PF stuff. So there's no way to show other than succeeding. That's the reality of a learning process. Until you start getting closer to succeeding, or succeeding more regularly, or simply failing less. I know those are the same thing, but like more people notice failure than they notice success, just like a natural human element. There's no way to do it. It's an issue in that people don't think of other people's feelings or emotions. There's no sympathy. There's no empathy. Kind of in life, especially not much anymore, especially not nowadays. They only think about what they want and what the end result actually is, and little about how other people may feel or be affected in the process. So it's a problem with a lack of basic human understanding from other people, whether that be simple social skills or not considering, again, just any sort of, like, you ever, okay, I've got a, I guess this isn't the best example, but you ever heard someone say something like, bro, what are you playing with, like, one hand? Like, how the fuck can't you do this? But what if the other person really only has one hand and they're there and they're doing everything, and it's just like, yeah, I have one hand. Like, you fucking idiot. Like, the only reason I say it's not a good example, I had a friend who literally, they had, I've told this story before. One of their hands was injured when they were young, and so they really can't move the joint super well. It kind of is just like this in a sense. So they can't, like, they can kind of hold a controller a little bit, but it's still not perfect. And a keyboard and mouse, that would be their WASD hand. So they can't really WASD, do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, shift, control, all that stuff. So what they did is they got like a military style Velcro, and they put a controller on their desk. And they, again, military grade Velcroed it to the desk so they could just use the analog stick to move. And then they got an MMO mouse, and they did everything else on that. And they went on to do, like, I lived with them during, like, Heroic Firelands era of WoW. And they did Heroic Ragnaros like that, just fine. And, so the point is that everyone's got different struggles. Everyone's got different means of approaching those struggles, of what they're comfortable with doing. And the problem is not that you're not showing your learning. It's that other people refuse to accept that people learn at different paces and sometimes have to learn in completely different ways altogether. Some people will strictly learn by failing. Some people will strictly learn from reading. Some people will strictly learn from watching. Some people will strictly learn from listening. There's all the different teaching styles and learning styles that are out there. And there's a reason why that sometimes traditional teaching and different aspects of just education in general that have been generalized for most people and not specialized in any capacity, that a lot of people struggle with. And it gives them anxiety, and it gives them problems. It gives them what you're feeling right now. And that's a problem it's just a societal problem. That's not something I'm prepared to give you a solution for. I think if somebody had one, we could really fucking use it right about now. So unfortunately, I don't have a real answer for you. It's kind of more of a philosophical one. You just have to keep doing. There's nothing else you can really do about it. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello, Mr. Happy. Hi. How long are you going to grow the hair? I was actually thinking of getting it cut maybe before I go to PAX East. I was going to get it cut a couple months ago. And keep in mind, I'm not going back to the buzz cut no matter what. I want to get it cut to probably about where it was when Dawn Trail released. So that's about 7 months ago. That would have yeah, because I think I've been growing this hair out for 15 or 16 months at this point. So I was thinking about just kind of cutting that time in half. Because right now, if I let my hair down, like in front of my face, it goes to like my chin. I kind of want to get it back to about where my eyes are. It's just easier to manage that way. I can style it a bit more realistically that way. And also, when I stopped cutting it, it was me literally buzzing everything down to a 2 on my own. A, there's probably uneven cuts in there. B, when all of your hair grows at the same rate from the same length, sometimes not all of it kind of works correctly. And I'm curious to get it like shaped up and, just made into something, more manageable. So I actually don't think I'm going to keep this length that much longer. It's no longer a mane at this point. It's more like a mop. So I'm not sure, but still. Also, 14 question. All jobs are characterized by their weapon. Do you have a weapon you would like to see? Go with a blitzball. We ain't going to get it. So you better pick a different one. Dual shields. I might make fun of Final Fantasy 2, but dual shields are pretty cool. So hit us with the Ratatan. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, Haps. Hi. Been wondering if you're going to continue doing videos of Dawn Trail verse. Yeah, so it's just been a bad time for me to work on all that. While I was working on it, we then went into patch cycle, release, holidays, chaotic, release, January being chill, working on other games, into me being sick. So let's just say I've been distracted from it. The answer is yes, we are now close enough to another patch where it would be at least after 7.2. But yeah, I'm going to continue doing that. It's just me as a limit break at 14. The melee are stronger than the ranged magic. Yeah, it is. That's known. Because it can only hit one target, whereas the ranged and magic one can hit multiple targets. So the potency needs to be different. Otherwise, there would never be a point in using the melee one. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey, Mr. Happy. Hi. I think this is the last question, actually. Do you think removing all raid buffs from all jobs to be healthy? No. I think they could design even crazier fights without having to design. No. Syncing up 2 minutes seems really outdated. Gets pretty boring. So syncing up only 2 minutes specifically is what you should be saying. Because like what we used to do is every 30 seconds there was a mini burst window. And it really accentuated at 1, 2, and 3 minutes. And then consequentially at 4, 5, 6, but in different ways. That was really intimidating for a lot of new players. And what we have now is a result of feedback regarding those systems. People asking for more alignment with abilities. So they went ahead and made 2-minute meta. When you were doing that, regardless of when you died, regardless of when you got up, and regardless of what mechanic you were doing, you created a much more even balance of damage variable throughout the fight. And it made more sense to be like, I'll wait 30 seconds for the next burst opportunity. And then I'll do I'll do my, whatever is available to me at that time. And I'll just have missed one because I died. And it's not the end of the world because that's just happening so regularly. But getting rid of all raid buffs is a pretty lame prospect. Because you've effectively just said that all 8 players really just don't give a shit about each other. Like, I don't think you ever want to send that message that all 8 of your players have almost no interaction with one another in any way, shape, or form. You're not in any way lifting them up. They're not in any way lifting you up. You might as well, you're like literally your coworkers at that point. I think that's really lame and uninspired. More uninspired than just 2-minute meta, in my opinion. So, no, I do not think that is a good idea. But that does look like that was the last question. Probably for the better, given that scream that I did. Because as you can tell from my voice since then, and the congestion kicking in, that wasn't a good idea. So that is going to be a wrap for this week's episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. Again, thanks to everyone for supporting, whether it be on Patreon or from buying stuff from SteelSeries. Be sure to ask your questions in the comment section below. I did forget to mention that at the start of the video because I honestly just needed to get this done so I could finish recovering. But yeah, thanks everyone for watching. Ask your questions for next week in the comment section, and I will see you then, much less sick. Presumably. I fucking better not be. Anyway, I'll see you then. Until then, I bid you adieu. Bye-bye.